Welcome to the Copy Talk Podcast. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member, FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated. And now, here's your host, Shannon Ross.
Well, hello, Copy Talk audience. Welcome. You got to start the show with your little clicker. Show everybody your clicker thing. What's it called?
I'm smiling
know
from
what these
ear
things
to ear.
are called?
So
Clapboard.
If you're listening to us, you can't see this, but if you're watching us, just
Yes.
so you know, for all of you out there that wondered, oh, is that going to mess you up, Kel? Sorry. These things are magnetized. There's a little magnet here.
Fun.
Not-
It makes me feel official that we have one of those.
Well, I'm even
And Ryan
more
even writes
official.
our name on it.
Yeah, we need to.
So welcome, Copy Talk.
Yeah, welcome.
We are almost to summer.
Yeah, we are.
I'm going to Texas this week. My Dallas. I love it. I don't know why, because, I mean, you've been to my house in Texas. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing, like, magical, but to us, it's magical.
Oh, I love
so,
that
like,
house.
we
I'm
have
jealous.
we have a pool. We don't, we have a diving board. It's just simple little things. Like,
it's
my
so
boys
fun.
love the diving board. That's, like, why we bought the house.
Mhm.
So, we
I
just
love
spend
that house.
hours out there.
I love that house. Well, I always get a
so-
little sad when you leave me, but I'm also jealous because I kind of want to go to Texas myself.
Yeah.
I need to try
Well,
to
you're
get there
always
for
welcome.
August. Oh, I know. I'm gonna cook.
My
I'll come crash
in-laws,
your
my
party.
in-laws, my in-laws live in the house when we're not there. But when we come, we're like, yeah, you're gonna have to leave because we want it all to ourselves, and they're so
Heartless.
sweet. That was part of the
Heartless.
deal. They're so sweet about it, and they don't mind escaping the Texas heat because they usually come to our
Yeah.
Colorado place. But
I should
yeah,
maybe
so
come visit
can
you while
come.
you're there in June because I will not go to Texas in August. And I don't think you're going to be there in August,
Yeah,
but
I
I
don't
will
think
not.
we're-
I try to avoid July even.
It gets a hot. I mean, it's not
it's
for
too
the
much.
weary. I
It's too
love it,
much.
but I
know.
love the heat.
You would
so-
live in
I
your
would.
flip-flops and a bathing suit 24/7.
and that's what I do there.
I know.
From like sun up to sundown.
Yes, I know.
So-
And then you come back.
I'll have more
extremely
spots, but I
tan.
don't care.
That's okay. Just put on sunscreen.
That's right. I will. I
Yeah.
do wear sunscreen. So, yes, I'm very excited.
Yes,
I'm a little amped today.
you are.
All the things.
I'm excited for you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll miss you.
You want to?
I will miss you.
Well, you want to know what you're
This
not
is why
gonna be?
you are why I don't live in Texas. You're really the only reason. So,
I just so you know, you're gonna miss. We were going to do something together, but now we're not going to be able to because you're leaving me.
I know.
Do you know what it is?
Yes.
No, you don't.
Oh.
You won't think of this. What do you
Oh,
think
I
it
was
is?
thinking of that Kathleen Madigan is coming to Denver to film her special
Well,
in early.
but we're going in October.
I know.
You remember that?
Oh, I got
You
the
bought
tickets. I
right?
did.
Look at
We
my
are- those
face.
are
I'm like, you bought
secured.
tickets.
Those are secured.
I still owe you for those tickets. And I don't know who the four are for that you've.
I don't
purchased.
care. I don't care if it's
love
going to
that
be
you bought
husbands or
four.
friends. As long as
We'll
you and
figure it
I
out.
go, I really don't care.
No, I'm about to
So-
show my extremely dorky. Maybe is this like teeny bopper side? Maybe this is my millennial side that I'm about to.
that you're
bring
getting
out.
in touch with.
Yeah. So you're leaving me, and guess what premieres on the 27th, May 27th.
The new Top Gun movie?
No. And I
It
could care
does.
less. You
I
can't
loved-
redo Top Gun.
Oh, I
I'm
love Top Gun.
sorry.
Oh, but it's not redoing. It has most of the same
Doesn't
people.
matter.
It was the
I'm
first
not a Tom
movie
Cruise
I
fan
bought with my
anymore.
own money. I
Tom
know.
Cruise was hot.
He's not Tom
back
Cruise.
in the day.
He's Maverick. Like, so you have to like spatially separate yourself
He's
from the man,
also-
from the weirdo to like the character.
Oh, you just said it. Okay,
So-
I made the hand signal.
I'm
yeah,
sure he
ever
doesn't
since
think
he
he's
jumped
weird.
on a table and ranted at a room full of people on the Mission Impossible 3 set. I already wasn't a big fan. Anyways, let me not just completely bash Tom Cruise. If you like Tom Cruise, good on you. But no,
What is it?
Stranger Things 4
Oh,
comes out on
yes.
May 27th. Yes, I just got to look.
Another
from Ryan and
80s
Kelly.
classic.
Well, it's not from 80s classic.
Well, the theme of Stranger Things
you mean
takes
the
place
theme
in
of
the,
it. Yes,
in the
yes, yes,
80s,
which is why I think I love
which is
it
why
so
it's
much.
so nostalgic for us.
Yes. Well, and also
Oldies.
I have binge watched that series probably 3 or 4 times.
Do you know that 1980 was 42 years ago?
Yes, because I'm
Isn't
42.
that sad? But do you know, like, in my mind all the time, and you guys probably are too, but everyone who grew up, like, in our era, 1980 always seems like it's 20 years ago.
That's a good.
Like, it never seems like 42 years ago.
Well,
And people still love the 80s.
Oh, that you just.
I know.
That's
because
very
it was
true.
it was such a special, magical decade.
Have you ever seen Stranger Things 4 either? I mean, Stranger Things at all, either of you?
They're too young.
I know it sounds like I'm.
Do you know what it is? I've seen the first. Okay, thank God.
Well, and they didn't have much of a budget then. You've seen it. You finally watched it after I talked her into it, and she loved it.
I was afraid I was going to be scared because I can't watch scary things. Like, I have a real active brain and memory, and I was traumatized by Nightmare on Elm Street as a kid. So I can't watch scary anything, or I can't sleep.
I can't either.
I don't think I slept for like 4 years after my stupid cousins made me watch that movie.
Number one,
because he attacks people in their sleep.
Okay, can we not go there? I was just as traumatized. Remember the kid?
We're talking about trauma today. So
remember
I'm
the kid on his waterbed? Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I won't be able to sleep tonight.
Increased heart rate.
Right? See? Ryan just,
awful.
oh my God, it's terrifying.
Don't.
Okay, so Stranger Things. So
yes.
I do not watch scary movies. I do not. I stay away from them. I don't even like thrillers for the most part. Stranger Things, so good.
It is
I
good.
love Elle. And they have,
I
read something recently on the budget. I mean, because now they're all like crazy.
They're all like in their 20s.
I know.
So.
Well, and the budget they have for Stranger Things 4 is totally different from the cheesy budget of 1, although I loved 1. Anyways, we were supposed to watch, they're doing 2 different drops, which really upsets me.
So just come to Dallas. I have a bedroom ready for you.
Don't tempt me.
So
don't tempt me.
We'll talk about that after the show.
Okay, we'll talk about that after the show. All right, but since we talked about trauma and we just went through our own trauma of Nightmare on Elm Street.
That was very dramatic. It literally, I had to sleep on my parents' floor for years.
Me too.
So
I slept in a sleeping bag next to my parents' bed. Not for years because they wouldn't have allowed that, but I was terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had to finally one day look up. I know we need to get the show. I had to get those scary images of him and that face and his knives out of my head. It helps. I had to Google, I had to look up the real man who played it because I needed to see his real face, so that when I saw the mean face, okay, he's really just this. He's not. He's kind of scary looking all by himself. Have you ever looked him up? Yeah, that didn't help so much with him. But
I know.
So let's talk about trauma, shall we?
We're continuing our series of healing from life's greatest disappointments. That was a disappointment for me. I mean, I did not want to spend my probably 8 to 12-year-old self being terrified at night and in the dark.
Would you like me to take your little clipboard and I'll walk you through a session real quick?
I know, right? You could. I like it.
Yes, let's get back to it though,
so
it's super interesting.
We're on our third part of this series. We might go 4 or 5. I don't know how far we'll get today. Yeah. But we have spent some time on mental health. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. We're trying to encourage our audience, our listeners out there, and your communities just to continue to heal. Like, don't get stuck. Don't stay stuck. Take care of your mentals, as Ryan says.
Take care of your mentals.
Mental health is so important. We do, I think, a bad job of taking care of our physical health. Our mental health has really gone down, I think, the crapper, especially through COVID when everything shut down.
Did you just say that?
It even took therapists like a really long time to get the right disclosures to do online therapy. Yeah. So I feel like everyone's a little backlogged of
It's a good way to, I mean, it's honest.
It is honest.
It's
just real.
Yes.
So coming out of COVID, we were all addicted to new stuff probably and sadder than we went in and isolated. And so now coming out, we have to get a little bit more aggressive.
During COVID? Nothing's ever going to be normal again. Nothing's ever going to be normal. And when you,
I was going to say it's always happy hour. Like that's, that was one of the mantras of COVID. Let's be honest. So you're like, it's noon. Well, I don't have anything else to do. So let's have margaritas.
Let's everybody started to day drink. Well, we do. We have a barn and we opened the Todd Barn and Tavern.
That's right.
Because you could social distance. It was outside, albeit cold, but I have a heated barn.
That's
and
right.
We opened the Todd Barn and Tavern.
I remember.
You could come down and have cocktails.
I brought my lawn chair.
Yep. I mean, and we supplied the booze. It's just true. Okay. But so yes.
But to get people back on track and just to show them that, there's a lot of new therapies out there over the past, say, 15, 20 years that weren't accessible, that kind of brought different fields together to combine them into new ways that have been really proven out to make an impact, to create change. No one wants to spend time and money at a therapist and feel the same way, 6 months to a year later.
Right.
That don't go to that therapy anymore. Find something new. Because, there's things out there now that, between going a few months and maybe I had to go to this kind of therapist for about 3 years every week, because I had a lot to go through and I needed to heal from some pretty significant things. But just don't get stuck. Emotions don't go away. So if you don't deal with them, they're going to manifest physically. And we spent a lot of time on last show starting to share kind of where they get stored physically. We talked last show about kind of what gets stored in your stomach, your spleen, your pancreas. And it's things like worry and distrust and feeling out of control, hopelessness, apathy, some other things as well. But you can kind of tie those a little bit together. Like if you start to worry, you're not going to really trust people. You're not going to you're going to start to feel out of control because you feel worried about things. You don't feel in control of things, which then leads to hopelessness. After hopelessness kind of sets in, you kind of go apathetic of like, well, I just don't care. Like if, and go numb. And when people become apathetic, it's actually one of the last emotions before you can just completely shut down, shut off, leave, whatever, go catatonic. Because it's like you have been burnt out for so long, you just don't care.
Yeah.
And so, and we are our last advocates. So oftentimes when we, it's not only the people who have done things to us, it's what we've done or what we've allowed or what we've not had a voice about or what we repressed, so there's a culprit there. And so last show we talked about kind of some theme work. What is theme work? We all have kind of themes in life of different things popping up at different seasons, but they look kind of similar. They're tied by some kind of connecting cord. And we were talking how this specific kind of therapy that we're spending some time in, why? Because I'm certified in it. I have gone through it myself. You've gone through this same kind.
I'm a certified patient.
Yeah, you're a certified patient. Hey, and I was a certified patient for a long, long time. And I was but what I love about that is like when I meet with patients now on the practitioner side, I can identify with what they're going through because I went through the same thing, so I can understand it from both sides of the fence. And so I always had to forgive my therapist for like making me tackle things. So we're going to talk about forgiveness today and the power of forgiveness and how actually it's one of the main things that help emotions clear from your body is forgiveness. So we're going to talk about the show about what it is, what it's not, and why it is such a powerful thing to forgive. And a lot of people have just misunderstanding of what forgiveness is. And so we'll spend some time there. But yeah, I always because I don't like emotion, and I still don't like emotion. I still love emotion. Still have bents to avoid things, to just move on, which is why I have to go in for what I call tune-ups, because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I just sit down and I cry. I don't know why. Like a couple of years ago, I went to like a doctor, like a checkup, and I just sat down. And I just started weeping, and I'm like, oh no, what's going on? And I had to go in for some tune-ups, and I had neglected. I have a tendency to neglect and repress, and so that's what I had been doing. But it wasn't until like I had an event that I was like, oh, you're not normal. Like, what's going on? Like, I had to go deal with some stuff. So when we were talking about last show, and if you haven't listened, go back, because these kind of build on each other. They build on each other. And so when a theme identifies, and we were using an example of worry, today we're going to change the example a little bit, because we're going to talk about another body part of where things get stuck. And today we are talking about your lungs and large intestines. So your GI tract is kind of like your second brain. Right. So it's composed of your intestines and your stomach. But what's interesting in terms of where emotions get stuck, they look at 3 different parts of your GI tract. So different emotions get stuck at different parts. So if you suffer from different ailments, it might be your large intestine that's actually having a problem versus your small intestine, which is interesting. So it gets to that level of granularity.
But it's interesting. You mentioned, sorry, I just have a question. Just in case anybody listening and just said,
what?
Shannon, you just mentioned lung. The last I checked, my lungs are not a part of my GI tract. Yeah. So help me understand. So why large intestine? Not why, because I know you didn't. Yeah. But Why?
So there's a science called Neuroemotional Technique and thought field therapy, and it kind of maps where and we talked last show about meridian points. So you have these 14 meridian points throughout your body. They're the same kind of points an acupuncturist opens energy flows to heal, muscular ailments and that sort of thing, help promote health. It's kind of like your emotional highway in your body, if you will. And emotions have frequencies, which physics has proven out.
Right.
And so when emotions get stuck, you actually have frequency, have energy stuck in your body in these different meridian points. And by accessing these meridian points, you can get in touch with what emotions they are and how to clear them. And so it's the other thought field therapy and the neuroemotion science behind this that has linked through also Chinese medicine, Indian medicine, where in the body certain emotions store. So these are broken. You can break down. This could be my chart breaks them down a little differently, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But so it could be a chart just of different systems. Okay. So it's not that it's your GI tract. Okay. There could be just a list of just your GI tract. Okay. This breaks it out a little bit differently because in this kind of therapy, which is called splankna, which we talked last show, means gut in Greek. It's a funny word to say, but it's pretty descriptive of what you are accessing, what's stuck in your gut, kind of what your gut emotions are, what your gut feelings are. Okay. And so this is done through muscle testing, through your deltoid, through your arm, and you train. I mean, you spend a lot of hours training how to use muscle therapy in this as a practitioner, but because you're doing a lot of muscle testing on an arm, and you can do things on little kids, you can use this kind of protocol on all ages. We color code it just to go through the testing quicker because no one, when you hold out your arm for muscle testing and it's out there, if it's out there for longer than like 3 minutes, you can't even stick out your arm because it's tired, right? So we do this type of chart. Splankna chart has been created just to get to the kind of the heart of the matter a little quicker.
Did those emotions also store in the lung? I know I'm pointing at your.
So let's. For instance, this could be either lung or large intestine. Okay.
Either or.
Either or, not both. Okay. So either or, but a practitioner would test which one. Okay. But the different emotions. So let's go lungs first. So perfectionism, defensiveness, feeling heavily guilt or obligation, self-hatred, and feeling invalidated, betrayal. Feelings of grief and sadness, yearning, confusion, unbelief, anguish, trouble letting go, loneliness. So those are the types of things that can store either in your lungs or in your large intestine. Okay. And so I see, in patients today coming out of COVID, I see a lot of sadness, of unbelief, of anguish. Anguish is kind of like that heavy sadness that just doesn't let up. Right. I think what COVID did was,
especially if they went through a loss, like if they lost somebody during that time period.
Absolutely. And when you come out of something like COVID, it's a building up because you didn't life stopped for a while. And everything has changed, and we had to answer so many questions, and we had to, address, we're going to do this or do this. And everybody had to make their own decisions and sometimes at the beginning, very limited information. Right. And so, I think a lot of people, and when you think of, we know worry in the stomach, right? So worry, stomach aches, those kind of things, a lot of intestinal problems people have as well when things get heavy in their lives. And so you have your small intestine, large intestine. So large intestine would be the same, similar areas that I just mentioned. But when we enter this type of therapy, we just briefly scratched the surface on the last show, is why are these points, why do they matter? They matter because when you can get in touch and where the emotion's stored by touching that organ. So if you're touching your lung and it's your left lung that indicates, and sadness, and it will indicate, is it sadness about your past, present, future? Just connecting that circuitry brings those emotions to the forefront. Okay. And it will also show you in your mind, like when you're intentionally connecting these points, almost like a car battery and the physics behind it, your intentionality behind that emotion will give you a memory, a vision, a very key critical piece of the puzzle that we're building in the therapy session. So so if sadness indicates, and it's sadness around the future, and it's in your left lung, by touching your left lung and your right temple and thinking about, okay, what am I sad about the future? Different things will come up. And then this is then where some talk therapy does come in.
Right.
Okay, tell me what came to your mind. What different things, what memory, what is at the forefront? Okay. Because you've connected those points. And then so and the person will start talking about their life. And so once you start identifying emotions, the process that we walk through is we identify kind of who is responsible for that, like who in your mind feels responsible for that, whether they are or not, it doesn't matter. It's your world, it's what's impacting you. And so it could be God, it could be yourself, it could be others, your parents, like in your boss,
and
your whatever.
Of those.
Yes. And it's
Sometimes
multiple
of
those.
Yeah.
And so when you're going after this emotion to eventually clear it out of the lung, or wherever it's stuck, how do you clear it? And we know this to be true when we've forgiven someone in the past, but you clear it through forgiveness. Why forgiveness? Not only does forgiveness have such scriptural references of when you let those things go, you can move on. But let's define forgiveness, because I think that's where people get hung up there. Yeah, people get stuck there. And so forgiveness is not condoning something. Forgiveness is not saying it was okay that it happened.
Right.
Forgiveness is not... because a lot of people get stuck. They think they'll let the person off the hook.
Yes.
Like the poison they're holding on to is poisoning that person for some.
And it's not.
It's not. It's only poisoning yourself.
Yeah.
So how I frame it with patients, and I want you to, what has resonated with you as well, because this is a very important point. Because whether you're in therapy or not, you can still forgive people. And forgiveness will bring you healing no matter how you go, what exercise you go through to forgive whomever or whatever has hurt you.
Well, and forgiveness doesn't mean you have to be friends with that person.
Oh,
again.
yes.
It doesn't mean...
It's not safe sometimes to be in a relationship with the people who have hurt you.
Especially, regardless of whatever the abuse, whatever.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that maybe you are... you haven't spoken to a parent in years because that parent was abusive or hurt you. This forgiveness doesn't mean that you need to call this parent and let them know that you forgive. That's not a component of splankna of kind. If you feel led to do that, great. But that's not part of splankna.
Sure.
The forgiveness, and I think this was sadly, I know we all heard about the recent Buffalo shooting.
Yes.
At that top supermarket or whatever it was. I don't know if it was the mom of or the wife, but it was somebody, and she was just quoted. I saw it on social media, and I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but essentially what she said is if she mentions if I didn't have God, there would be a whole lot of malice right now in my heart. But I am going to work towards, she wasn't saying, I'm going to work towards forgiving this person, because if I don't forgive him, the shooter, then I will be killing me.
Right.
And that's it's your own poison.
Yeah.
And I love, to your point, it's not letting them off the hook. It's not saying, hey, it's okay that you did that to me. That's no component nowhere of what forgiveness even truly means. Yeah. But it is a critical part of splankna.
Yeah. And a lot of other therapies. I mean, it doesn't, it's a part of healing. It's really not just a part, right? Because there's different, and I'll give some tips of how to go through an exercise just yourself in this whole kind of forgiveness realm. But you're not saying okay. And you're not, like you said, it's also not reconciliation. Reconciliation requires two people. Right. You might need to forgive a parent who's no longer alive, who isn't going to ask for your forgiveness. Right. So it has nothing to do with the other person. Right. What you're doing through this process, and you're planting what I call you're planting a seed of forgiveness. Some people need more seeds than others, right? So someone flicks you off on the highway, that person maybe just needs one or two seeds, but someone who has abused you, you're not going to go through one forgiveness statement and they're going to be out of your system forever. Right. No. But what forgiveness is, because we just went through what it is not, what it is, it's allowing that, it's letting that person go. realizing that the poison inside you is only damaging you.
Right.
So you're allowing it to, what I love, and again, Splunkness faith-based, which I think is a very critical component of this, whether you believe in God or not. And like I said, I've had atheists come to my door, and
you don't have to be a Christian.
You don't have
to do
no,
this.
you don't. But what it helps, and there is a scripture that talks about this, about like entrusting them to him who judges justly. And in the scripture, it's referencing Jesus. But in terms of like, you're handing that person over for the Lord to judge. We make very bad gods. We get very stressed out being gods. We don't. And when we judge people, we are doing things that are unnatural to our systems, which is why we go out of whack. And
we weren't created to be that.
We were not created to handle that. It's a lot of pressure, stress, stuff that we don't need. And so you're entrusting that person for God to deal with so that you can be free of that person. That person has done enough damage to you. And it could be forgiving yourself for believing a lie that felt like truth. Self-hatred has a lot of lies that come up that you have to forgive yourself on. Forgiving yourself for making a vow. Lies and vows are pretty much what we do to ourselves. Believing lies or making vows. I will never. I will always.
Yeah.
They
and
put in
into
these
agreement with that.
Yes.
Well, that's what the vow. You're coming into agreement with
it creates
a lie.
these strongholds
Right.
that then kind of dictate areas we never meant them to.
Right.
So I will never be my mother.
Right.
Or I will never be my father.
Right.
But because you've taken this now and you've kind of messed with the boundaries and stuff, oftentimes I've heard and I've seen this, the person you don't want to become, that you've made a vow not to become, you start finding yourself doing the very things that you hated that person doing.
Right. Because
you see a lot of
they
these.
may have made the same vow you did.
Yes.
Yes.
And a lot of different generational things happen this way.
Yeah.
And, and we see it in, a lot of people who have been abused become abusers. Why? Because there's this weird thing going on of generational vows continuing on, and we're not meant to exist in those kind of frameworks.
That saying, hurt people.
Hurt people. Yeah, absolutely.
Because then we hurt out of our own wounds.
That's right.
Because we haven't healed in those spaces. And,
That's right.
On the line of forgiveness, to your point, and I'm glad you pointed it out, you saying one forgiveness statement over, let's say you're needing to forgive somebody who has abused you. Let's say it's betrayed you.
Sure.
Maybe it's a spouse that left you.
Yeah.
Or there was infidelity and left you. There's so much there. There is you making one statement of forgiveness is probably not. You're going to have to walk through that.
Yeah.
But that act of just planting the seed is you don't want that person to allow them to continue to hurt. They may not even be in your life anymore. They may even be deceased, but they're still hurting you through your own unforgiveness. And being able to plant that seed and then continuing to plant that seed and let that seed bring forth good fruit of forgiveness, you will move out of an area of almost self-sabotage. Because the unforgiveness, you're just sabotaging any current relationships you're in, or maybe relationships with your kids, or maybe it's your job, or whatever it is, because you're acting out of a wound that you aren't walking in forgiveness. And walking is the way to put it, because it's a journey. Right. Forgiveness is not a one-time, it's not a flash in the pan. It's a journey, especially depending upon the level of
But if you
trauma.
learn this process, if you look to forgiveness as kind of like the path to freedom, even if you're not in counseling today or ever again, whatever, I still do forgiveness statements, and I'm not in active counseling right now because something will arise, and I've gotten rid of my junk. I don't have my baggage anymore, but I still get offended, right? I still have things not go my way, or someone makes me mad or whatever. But I've learned this process of forgiving them and how to let that go. And even just reciting, and whatever forgiveness statement, however you want to form it. Right. When I'm with a patient, I form it like my whole being forgives so-and-so for this. And I try to get in touch with naming what that is. And all those things that is, and so just going through that process, and I say, and in session, we say it 3 times, because again, there's something important about audibly saying it out loud, so yourself can also hear it, because you'd be surprised how much our bodies respond to what we say. Right. So as we're saying, my whole being forgives this person for betraying me or for making me feel inhuman or whatever it is, however specific you can get of how that person, what they did made you feel. If it made you feel unworthy, if it made you lose your identity, if it made, whatever it is that you can name, if you can walk through those forgiveness statements, and you might have to say it 3 times a day for 100 days, like who knows? But that is the process that helps to flush it out and let that person or your own woundedness of what you've done to yourself.
Let yourself go.
It lets yourself go, and it creates that blank slate. It creates this kind of newness on the inside. And what I love is there are sciences out there that just use science to validate the power of forgiveness.
Oh, yeah. This is not just a Christianity thing.
Yeah.
It's not just, that is what we believe. That is our faith, but that is not just a
And
Christianity.
how many inspiring stories of like people who have survived horrific events. Corey Tenenbaum comes to mind, who was a survivor of Nazi prison camps. But they all talk about a similar theme of forgiveness led them out of their own mental dungeons.
Even if she was being traumatized by her abusers and by the Nazi soldiers and in the prison camp, they killed her sister. The whole story. That's a great book, by the way. The Hiding Place. Book. I'm gonna totally plug that. But it's true. She had to would walk through forgiveness of her abusers even while she's being tortured. During her,
because forgiveness creates this plane where our circumstances don't have to dictate anymore what we live under, and it doesn't necessarily mean the circumstances are gone. But forgiveness is probably the most powerful component of healing from your greatest disappointments. And you're going to have to do it your entire life. Something that happened as a kid, different things will trigger you 40, 50 years later that you'll probably still have. But if you start to identify this process, if you start to identify the power of what forgiveness can do, whether you have a counselor or not at the moment, you can walk yourself through forgiveness statements until you feel different, right? Until you've actually planted enough seeds to shift for those emotions to clear out, and you can literally you will know when you've let that person go because you won't be triggered anymore. Whether, and we all get triggered by very interesting things that we wouldn't necessarily identify as like, what is that? You know, but it does something in our system to create familiarity of an old pain. And so it's probably the single most important component, like I just said. So,
well, and that's what's so great about Splunk is you'll have dots that you didn't know connect. And then you make this connection. And maybe it stemmed from when you were 15 to now you're 45 or whatever the case may be. But you will identify different areas. Maybe it's lies, agreements, vows, whatever it may be, tied to either a theme or one emotion. And there will be this one, maybe it's a person, maybe it's yourself, maybe it's God, maybe it's all three, maybe that you need to plant that seed of forgiveness. Because I don't think there's ever been a time when I've been in Splankna that there's ever just been one thing I had to forgive.
Oh gosh, no! It's usually like 3 or 4.
Well, it's always me, another person, and us every single time. I'm like, this is, and that's but we can be our greatest enemy, and we might be the last person we forgive.
That's right.
Sometimes we're the hardest person to forgive,
right?
Because we walk through so much guilt and shame,
and we put so much expectations on ourselves. Like when a lot of people forgive themselves in sessions, it's so much of like, we think we should know what to do in situations we've never been in. We think we should just get over it. We think we should have been smarter to not be betrayed. We think we should, we should just be perfect.
Well,
and never stumble.
If you are someone who struggles with self-worth and value, then if you have low self-worth and value, then you will actually think you are not worthy of being forgiven. Even if it's somebody else. So let's say you were betrayed. You will log that as, I am not worthy enough or valuable enough for somebody to love me, which is why that person left. But but now I can't forgive me because I'm not really valuable enough.
That's right. Yeah.
And that can be the hardest place to let go of or walk in forgiveness.
And every place is going to take a little longer, but what we'll spend time, I think we have maybe 1 or 2 more shows because I definitely want to go through this because there's some things that I've learned to walk through and I've learned the power in it that even if it doesn't require a therapist, like anyone can forgive someone else, right?
Sure.
So anyone can go through these things. If you're with a counselor, they'll help you identify what exactly you want to work on, where the issues are, what the emotions are stuck, where they're stuck. So it'll rapidly help you. But even if you don't have access to that, and we'll post all these resources on our website, copytalkpodcast.com.
Like a Splankna database of
There
somebody
is.
in their area.
Yeah.
Can look up
So
a
we'll
practitioner?
we'll give the website and resources so people can find it through our website. But if you don't have access to that, there's some just practical things that you can walk through, and forgiveness is one of those. And we'll go through a few others as well, just to equip people. Because like I said, I don't go into a counselor's office anymore once a week, but still I find myself still get stuck. I find myself still hanging up on certain things, and I have to identify it. I have to think of, what is it? Because naming it does help to understand, like, okay, when this person, or when I do this or whatever, when this happens to me, what is it evoking? Instead of just, shushing it away, I need to name what it is. And then I need to understand of who am I holding responsible for it. And then you go through the forgiveness, statements, and then you do that as long as it needs to take, part of your prayer time or part of your meditation time, once a day or once every couple days. And this is how you start to shift things through. And how is because you start feeling lighter, and so that's what we want to equip people. So we'll spend some more time next time we're together to do that. But in the meantime, where can people find us and the resources?
Copytalkpodcast.com website, the resources tab. We'll have things listed under there. Yes.
The resource bank.
Instagram. Oh, resource bank. Thank you. Instagram, Copytalk Podcast.
Forgive yourself.
Forgive
yourself.
yourself.
It. That even deserves a bell ring.
It does.
Plus YouTube and and taking care of your mentals. That's still like my favorite one.
That's the overarching thing.
Hashtag
he
taking
came
care
up
of
with
your
that.
mentals.
It's so good.
YouTube, subscribe, share. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so. I think that's good.
End part. Yes.
Happy summer, everybody. Enjoy it. Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated.